Abandoned and carrying a child, she raised a cabin with her own hands until an Apache became her guardian and chose what no one else would. What Clara did not know was that her rescue would spark a jealousy so fierce it would force Ayo into an impossible decision: honor a sacred vow to his people, or become the angel one desperate soul was praying for. Before this story begins, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and whether someone ever saved you when the world turned its back. In the harsh spine of the New Mexico Territory, 1873, a young woman was about to learn that the deepest betrayals often come from those closest to us, and that the fiercest love can rise from the least expected place. You're pregnant. Clara Whitlock stood in the narrow kitchen of her guardian's house, fingers clamped to the table's edge until her knuckles blanched. She was 18, and she had lived under Victor Hale's roof with Ruth Hale for 4 years, ever since fever took her parents and left her alone in the world. Ruth Hale's voice struck like winter stone. How could you do this to us? After all we've done. Took you in, fed you, clothed you. This is how you repay our Christian charity. Madrina, please, Clara said, her voice breaking. I didn't. Don't lie to me. Ruth's hand cracked across Clara's face, sending her stumbling back. Whose is it? Which boy from town seduced you, or did you throw yourself at him? Clara pressed a hand to her burning cheek. Tears spilling. She wanted to scream the truth, to point at Victor Hale by the fire, calmly turning pages of his Bible, as if nothing were happening. She wanted to say there had been no seduction, no consent, only forced threats and a shame so heavy it had sealed her mouth for months. But she couldn't. She had tried once. 3 months earlier, when she first understood what was happening to her body, she had gone to Ruth in tears and told her everything. Ruth had struck her, then too, called her a liar, said Victor Hale was a respectable man who would never touch her that way. You're jealous, Ruth had hissed. Jealous I have a husband. You're just an orphan charity case. You'd say anything to stir trouble. After that, Clara had gone quiet. She endured. She hoped it would stop. It didn't. Now there was a child, undeniable proof, growing inside her, and not a single word that would make anyone believe the truth. Get out, Ruth said flatly. Pack your things. You have 1 hour. Madrina, please. I have nowhere to go. You should have thought of that before you disgraced yourself. Ruth snapped her mouth, twisted with disgust. We are a respectable Christian family. We will not have this scandal tied to our name. Victor Hale finally looked up from his Bible. Their eyes met for a heartbeat. Clara saw no remorse, no guilt, only cold satisfaction that the evidence of his sin was being removed before it could expose him. The cabin, he said quietly. Her parents' old cabin in the mountains. Give her that. At least we can say we didn't leave her with nothing. It was cruel brilliance. The cabin sat 40 miles from town, deep in Apache territory, abandoned for 4 years, and surely ruined. Giving it to her was the same as a death sentence dressed up as mercy. Ruth nodded. Fine, take the cabin. Take whatever you can carry. But you leave tonight and you never come back. If you ever speak our names, if you ever try to link us to that child, I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. Clara packed with shaking hands, 1 bag, a few clothes, her mother's Bible, the only piece of her parents she had left. Ruth grudgingly handed her some food and a blanket. It wasn't enough to live on, but it was all she got. As Clara stepped through the doorway, Victor Hale's sons, her supposed brothers, watched with hard eyes. They were 17 and 15, and they had once called her sister. Now they looked at her like dirt. The youngest, Eli Salazar, stood frozen with tears in his eyes. He was only 12, too young to grasp the full cruelty unfolding. Clara, he began, but his mother cut him off. Don't speak to her. She's not your sister anymore. 8 months pregnant, with winter closing in and the mountains waiting. Clara walked into the night. The Dry Creek townsfolk watched her go. Lamps flickered in windows as whispers spread. By morning, Everyone would know the orphan who'd gotten herself in trouble, the charity case who'd proven unworthy of mercy. No questions would be asked. No one would investigate. Victor Hale, standing as a respected man in town, remained untouched. The 40-mile trek to the cabin took Clara Whitlock 3 long days. She moved slowly, her heavy belly turning every step into a blade of pain. She slept wherever she could, inside shallow caves, beneath twisted pines, anywhere. The wind eased for a few hours. She ate sparingly, counting each bite, knowing the food would never last. On the 3rd day, she finally saw the cabin, or what remained of it. The roof had caved in, the door sagged from broken hinges, the windows gaped like empty eye sockets. 4 years of storms and abandonment had nearly erased it from the mountain. Clara stood frozen, staring at the wreckage of her last refuge, and felt something crack deep inside her. She was 18, carrying her abuser's child alone in Apache land, where death could come by exposure, hunger, or a bullet. She had nothing. She was nothing. The people meant to protect her had handed her to the wolves. Her knees gave out. She sank into the dirt, both hands pressed to her belly as the baby stirred. For the first time since the nightmare began, she broke. The sobs tore out of her, raw and wordless. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the child. "I'm so sorry. I tried to keep you safe." Her breath hitched. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how we survive." The baby kicked again, firm, insistent, like an answer, like a promise. "We fight. We live. We don't quit." Clara wiped her face, lifted her eyes to the ruined cabin, and chose. She would rebuild it. Somehow. She would raise shelter before the baby came. She would scratch a garden into the dirt, learn which roots fed and which killed, teach herself how to live out here. She would not let them win. She would not let Victor Hale's cruelty write the ending of her life. She did not know she was being watched from the trees. She did not know an Apache warrior had tracked her since she crossed into the territory, curious about the pregnant white woman walking straight toward death. She did not know Ayo was wrestling with his own war duty to his people, a promised future with Tiva, and a pull he could not explain toward a stranger's suffering. She did not know that 3 weeks later, when exhaustion finally crushed her and she collapsed beside the half-rebuilt cabin, he would be forced to choose, and that choice would change on both their lives. All Clara knew was this: she had to survive today. Tomorrow would have to wait. The first week in the mountains nearly killed her. Every morning she woke with fire screaming through her back, her swollen belly turning even the smallest movement into torture. Rain slipped through the broken roof. Wind whistled through gaps in the walls, stealing the little warmth her weak fire could offer. The work never ended. The brutal grinding labor of survival felt impossible for a pregnant 18-year-old alone. But Clara refused to die, refused to give Victor Hale and Ruth Hale the satisfaction of being right. She started with the roof. Using fallen branches and what timber remained, she climbed onto the sagging frame, heart pounding, patching holes with shaking hands. Her palms split and bled. Splinters buried themselves deep in her skin. Twice she nearly fell, catching herself just in time, terror crashing through her as she realized a fall would kill not just her, but the child inside her. When the roof could finally hold, she turned to the walls. She packed mud and grass into the gaps. It looked rough, but it slowed the wind. She rehung the door with leather strips cut from a rabbit she managed to trap. Every small success felt enormous. Food was the constant fear. The supplies Ruth Hale had given her were gone in 4 days. After that, Clara lived on what she could gather: wild berries, edible roots her mother once taught her to recognize the occasional fish from the stream rabbits when her crude traps worked. It was never enough. She was eating for 2. Her body begged for nourishment she could not give. She weakened day by day. Her clothes hung loose everywhere except her belly. Her face hollowed, dark shadows carving themselves beneath her eyes. Still she worked. She cleared a small patch of earth near the cabin and planted the seeds she had saved from the last vegetables she'd been given. It was late in the season. The garden might fail, but she had to try. She had to believe in something beyond the next meal, the next dawn. What Clara did not know was that she was no longer alone. Every day, Ao watched from the forest's edge. He had tracked her from the moment she arrived, caught between instinct and law. A white settler had crossed into tribal land. Protocol demanded he drive her away or report her to the High Stone Council. But she was pregnant alone, fading by inches. What honor was there in hastening the death of someone already condemned? So Ao watched, and the more he watched, the more something inside him shifted. This young woman, barely more than a child, carried a courage that would have shamed most warriors. Ao had known. She did not weep. She did not surrender. When exhaustion finally drove her to her knees, she rested only minutes, then pushed herself upright and went back to work. Ao had seen seasoned fighters break under lighter burdens. He had watched grown men collapse into despair with far more food, shelter, and help than she had. Yet Clara Whitlock kept going, kept building, kept surviving, kept choosing life. Without planning to, Ao began leaving things for her. A rabbit already cleaned hung from a branch near her cabin. A stack of firewood appeared while she slept. Once, when he saw her struggling to reach berries high on a branch, he waited until she moved on. Then he gathered the fruit and left it in a small basket by her door. Clara noticed, of course. At first, terror wrapped around her chest. Someone was watching her, helping her, and she didn't know whether it was mercy or a game before the kill. But the gifts continued. Always useful, always careful, never threatening. Slowly, fear gave way to wary gratitude. Something wanted her to live. In return, she left small offerings: a scrap of cloth woven from plant fibers, a rough wooden carving made during long nights when she was too tired to work and too afraid to sleep. They were humble gifts, but they were all she possessed. Ao kept every one of them. He did not understand why they mattered so much to him, only that they did. He had Tiva. Fierce, striking Tiva, who had loved him since childhood. Their union had been promised when they were 14. In 2 months they would marry, and Ao would stand among the tribe's leading warriors. Tiva would bear strong sons, fight beside him, become the ideal Apache wife. He should have been thinking of her, not of this white woman in the mountains who stirred a protective instinct he could not explain. Yet he could not stop watching Clara, could not stop making sure she had enough food, enough wood, enough of a chance to survive another day. One afternoon in early October, Ao was returning from a hunt when he saw her in the garden. She knelt in the dirt, pulling weeds, each movement slow and strained. Then she froze. Her hand went to her belly. Even from a distance, Ao saw the fear drain the color from her face. She tried to rise. Her legs failed her. She sank back to her knees, then pitched forward onto her hands, its breath tearing out of her in sharp gasps that carried across the clearing. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Ao moved without thought, stepping from the trees and crossing the open ground in long strides. Clara's head snapped up at the sound. When she saw him, tall-armed Apache terror flooded her eyes. "No," she gasped, trying to crawl away. "Please, no." Another wave of pain struck. She cried out, folding over, and Ao saw the dark stain spreading across her dress. His chest tightened. The baby. Something was wrong with the baby. He dropped to his knees beside her, keeping his movements slow open. "I help," he said in broken English. "Not hurt. Help." Clara met his gaze, green eyes full of pain, fear, and a desperate hope she could no longer hide. She had been alone for so long. Now the man who had been leaving gifts was offering help when she needed it most. "The baby," she whispered. "Something's wrong. Please, please help my baby." Ao had assisted births before. He had watched the tribe's midwives, learned enough to know what was needed: shelter, warmth, steady hands. things she did not have alone in this broken cabin. He should have taken her to the tribe, but they might reject her or worse. Some would see a white settler as an enemy to be erased, not saved. Bringing her there now would ignite a conflict he could not contain. The choice came without words. Io lifted Clara into his arms. She was frighteningly light. He carried her into the cabin, fed the fire-boiled water, laid out cloths, and then he crossed a line he could never step back from. He stayed. He remained with her through the long afternoon and deep into the night as her body fought to push the child too soon into the world. When the pain overwhelmed her, he held her hand. He murmured reassurances in a language she barely understood, yet somehow trusted. When dawn broke and Clara was still alive, still pregnant, the crisis passed. Io knew then what he had done. He had chosen her life over his duty to his people, over his promise to Tiva, over everything he had been raised to believe loyalty required. Exhaustion finally claimed Clara, her hand still wrapped around his. Io sat beside her, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, wondering what he had just sacrificed and why, despite knowing he should leave, he could not bring himself to pull his hand away. For 3 days, Io remained. He told himself he would go once she was strong enough to survive alone. But each day gave him another reason to stay just one more night. The first day, Clara Whitlock was too weak to stand. Io brought her water-simmered broth from a rabbit he had caught and kept the fire alive through the cold hours. She watched him with wary gratitude, as if expecting him to fade like a dream or turn brutal like a nightmare. "Why are you helping me?" she finally asked on the second day, her voice rough from disuse. Io searched for the words. "You fight," he said simply. "You don't give up. This honorable." Clara's eyes filled with tears. It was the first kindness anyone had spoken to her in months. "I don't feel honorable," she whispered. "I feel broken." Io shook his head. "Broken things that still stand are stronger than things never broken." By the third day, Clara could sit up and eat solid food. Io prepared to leave. He had to. Tiva would be looking for him by now. The hunt he had claimed shouldn't have taken this long. Questions would follow. As he reached the door, Clara stopped him. "What's your name? I should know the name of the man who saved my life." "Io," he said. "Io." She repeated it, the sound strange on her tongue. "I'm Clara. Clara Whitlock." Her voice wavered. "I don't know how to thank you. You didn't have to help me. Our people are supposed to be enemies." "People say many things about who enemies are," Io replied. "I think we choose. You never enemy to me." He left before she could answer, dissolving into the trees like smoke. But he didn't go far. He camped a mile away, close enough to watch, far enough to keep the lie that he had gone. When Io finally returned to the tribe 4 days later, Tiva was waiting at the edge of camp. Her face was dark with anger and suspicion. "Where were you?" she demanded. "A 2-day hunt took 6. She was beautiful the way a storm is beautiful. Raw power and danger braided together. Her black hair fell to her waist. Her eyes could pin a man in place. She moved with the lethal ease of a warrior proven in combat. She had killed enemies in raids. She feared nothing, and she expected absolute loyalty from the man promised to her. "Tracking took longer than expected," Io said evenly. "It wasn't entirely a lie." "You're lying." Tiva stepped closer, studying his face. "I've known you since we were children. I know when you hide something." Her gaze sharpened. "What are you hiding?" "Nothing that concerns you." Wrong answer. Her hand slid toward her knife, not in threat, but in warning. "Everything you do concerns me. In 2 months we marry. Your secrets become mine. Your honor becomes my honor. So tell me," she pressed, "what did you do on this hunt that you can't speak of?" Io met her eyes. "I helped someone who needed it." Tiva's eyes narrowed. "What kind of person needs help you can't admit to?" Then understanding flashed sharp as a drawn blade. "A white settler." You helped a white settler. The accusation hung heavy. Tribe members paused and gathered, drawn by her raised voice. Io felt their attention like weight on his chest. There is a girl, Io said carefully, alone in the mountains, pregnant, dying. I gave her food. That is shameful if she's a settler on our land, Tiva shot back, righteous fury ringing in her voice. How many of our people have settlers killed? How often have they stolen land, broken promises, destroyed our way of life, and you help one of them? She is not an army, Io said, calm but unyielding. She is not a threat. She is a girl, barely more than a child, who will die without help. We are not monsters who let pregnant children starve because of their skin. Tiva turned to the gathering. You all hear this? He admits aiding a white settler in our territory while their soldiers hunt us. At that moment, Token stepped forward. As a voice of the High Stone Council, his words carried weight. Where is this girl now? In her cabin, Io answered. Miles from here. She knows nothing of our camp. He met Tokan's eyes. She is no threat, perhaps not now. Tiva cut in, but settlers multiply like rabbits. 1 becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. We show mercy. They bring invasion. Tiva stared at Io with something close to betrayal burning in her eyes. You've been going back to her, she said sharply. More than once. I can see it on your face. She wasn't wrong. Io had returned twice since he first left the cabin, bringing firewood and game. He had told himself it was only to make sure his first help hadn't been wasted. But standing there, now facing the hurt and fury in Tiva's gaze, he was forced to admit a harder truth. He wasn't just protecting Clara Whitlock. He was drawn to her. There was something about her stubborn will to live about the way she refused to break when everything in her life had tried to crush her that reached deep inside him. She reminded him why he had become a warrior in the first place, to stand between danger and those who could not stand for themselves. But saying that would sound like an excuse. Worse, it would expose feelings he wasn't ready to name, let alone defend. I won't abandon someone who needs help, Io said quietly. This is not something I will bargain over. Tiva's expression hardened to ice. Then you choose, she said. Her or me. Your future with your people, with me. With the honor of our marriage. Or that white girl dying in the mountains. Choose now, Io. It was meant to corner him. Tiva expected him to retreat, to promise he would leave Clara to her fate. That was the sensible choice. The loyal choice. The choice that protected his standing, his future, his life. But Io saw Clara's green eyes in his mind, filled with fear and fragile hope. He heard her whisper, Please, help my baby. He remembered her bloodied hands, her ruined cabin, the doomed garden she planted anyway, the way she kept fighting, when surrender would have been easier. He could not leave her, no matter the cost. I won't stop helping her, Io said evenly. Not until she and her child are safe. The silence that followed cut deep. Tiva's face shifted shock, pain, fury, before settling into something colder than anger. Then we are finished, she said flatly. You've chosen a white stranger over your people, over me, over everything. And when the council hears of this, they will make you regret it. She turned and walked away, her back rigid with rage. The gathered members of the tribe slowly drifted apart. Some shook their heads. Others whispered. Io remained where he stood, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. Token approached, his weathered expression unreadable. That was foolish, he said quietly. Tiva is not only your promised wife. She is the chief's niece. Refusing her, choosing a white girl over her will bring consequences. I know, Io answered. Tokan studied him closely. Do you... This girl. There is more here than mercy, isn't there? Io wanted to deny it, but Token had trained him since childhood. Lies had never worked between them. I don't know what it is, Io admitted, but I won't let her die. Token let out a slow breath. Then you had better be certain she is worth it. You've just lit a fire, and if Tiva chooses to act on her anger... He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. That night, as Io returned to his wiki-up, a sense of unease followed him like a shadow. Tiva was proud, fierce, and unused to rejection. She would not let this insult fade. And far away, Clara, alone in her cabin, had no idea that simply surviving, simply accepting help, had placed her at the center of a gathering storm. 3 weeks passed. Autumn leaned toward winter, and Clara's belly grew heavy. The baby would come soon, within a month by her count. Fear lived with her, daily fear of labor. Starting in the night, fear of something going wrong with no one to help. But hope lived there too, because Ao kept returning. Not every day. Sometimes a full week passed without seeing him, except for the signs he left behind: firewood, stacked neatly. Meat hung where animals couldn't reach it. Once he left a beautiful blanket woven from rabbit fur work that must have taken weeks. When he did appear, he kept a careful distance. He fixed what she could not, patching the highest parts of the roof, hunting larger game, teaching her which plants healed and which poisoned. They spoke little. His English was limited, her Apache non-existent. Yet they understood each other through gestures, shared work, and a quiet that felt safe. Clara found herself waiting for his visits with an intensity that unsettled her. He belonged to another woman. He was Apache. She was white. Any future between them was impossible. Her heart did not care. One afternoon, Io showed her how to set stronger rabbit traps, his hands guiding hers. A warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the sun. When he laughed, a rare soft sound at her clumsy attempts to repeat Apache words. Something inside her cracked open, and she knew she was in danger of wanting what she could never have. She was falling for him. She had probably been falling for him since the night he stayed, since the long hours when she nearly lost the baby, and he refused to leave her side. What Clara Whitlock did not know was that Io was fighting the same war inside himself. Every time he left her cabin, he swore it would be the last. He told himself he would make sure she had enough supplies to survive until the child was born. Then he would return to his people and the life that waited for him. And yet, a day later, he would find himself back at her clearing, unable to stay away. Tiva noticed. She watched Ao like a hunting hawk, counting his absences, cutting through his excuses with silence and narrowed eyes. She no longer spoke to him directly. Instead, she let her contempt bleed through cold stares and sharp remarks made just loudly enough for him to hear. Wedding preparations stopped. The tribe whispered. One evening, Tiva called a private gathering with several young warriors she had trained beside men loyal to her men who shared her hatred of white settlers. Io was not invited, but news traveled fast. Tokan came to Io's wiki-up after dark, his expression carved from worry. "You need to know what Tiva is planning," the elder said quietly. "The council has heard her words. She's convinced others that your white girl is a danger, that she will bring soldiers, that she is a sickness that will spread." Io's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means she has permission," Tokan replied grimly. "At dawn, she and her warriors ride to the cabin. They plan to burn it, with the girl inside if necessary." Token's hand closed on Ao's shoulder. "They'll call it an accident, a fire gone wrong. No one will question it." Io was moving before the words fully settled. He grabbed his weapons, his thoughts racing. He had to warn Clara. He had to get her away before Tiva arrived. But where could she go? She was 9 months pregnant, barely able to walk far. Taking her to another white settlement would only deliver her back into the same cruelty that had driven her into the mountains. He ran through the night, his feet finding the narrow path even in darkness. When he reached the clearing, dawn was beginning to pale the eastern sky. Clara was already awake. Sleep came in fragments now, her body heavy and aching. She was kneeling by the stream, washing her face when she saw him. Ayo, she said, smiling, then stopped when she saw his face. What's wrong? Danger, he said urgently. Warriors coming. Fire. He gestured toward the cabin, struggling with the words. You must leave. Now. Her color drained. I can't, she said. I'm too far along. And where would I go? Her hand pressed instinctively to her belly. The baby could come any day. Then we run, Ayo said harshly. Or we fight. But you cannot stay. Before she could answer, they heard it hoofbeats. Several horses. Fast. Ayo's hand went to his knife. Too late, he breathed. They're here. 7 warriors rode into the clearing, Tiva at their head. She sat tall in the saddle, a burning torch clenched in her fist, her beauty sharp and merciless as stone. When she saw Ayo standing in front of Clara's cabin, her mouth twisted with fury and triumph. So it's true, she said in Apache. You've been coming here, guarding this white intruder like she's something precious. Tiva, don't. Ayo answered, his voice low but steady. She has done nothing to harm our people. Her existence harms us. Tiva snapped, lifting the torch. Every white settler on our land is a broken promise, a death waiting to happen, the beginning of another invasion. She pointed at him. And you betrayed your people, your future, your honor. Me. Clara could not understand the words, but she understood the danger, the fire, the rage, the warriors, spreading into a half-circle that sealed every path of escape. She stepped forward, standing beside Ayo, despite his attempt to shield her. Please, she said, forcing calm into her voice. I'm not your enemy. I'm just trying to live. I'll leave after my baby is born. I swear. Just please don't do this. Tiva's eyes locked onto her, burning with hatred. You don't even know what you've destroyed, she said coldly. You don't know he was mine, that he threw away his honor, his future, everything for you. A white girl who would have died here anyway. She raised the torch. I'll end it quickly. That's mercy more than you deserve. No, Ayo roared. He lunged at Tiva's horse, yanking her from the saddle before she could throw the torch. They hit the ground hard. Ayo pinned her wrists, stopping her from reaching her blade. The other warriors surged forward at once, weapons drawn. 7 against 1. Death odds even for a warrior like Ayo. He did not retreat. You want to burn her? Ayo said, breath rough in his chest. You go through me first, and I will kill anyone who tries, starting with you, Tiva. I don't want to, he added, his voice low and steady. But I will. He looked down at her, and the truth cut through the air. That means I would kill for her too, even you. I'm sorry, Ayo said quietly. But yes, even you. Something shattered in Tiva's expression. Not just anger now, but grief raw, unguarded. Then you've already killed what we were, she said hoarsely. What we could have been. When Ayo released her, she rose slowly and turned to the other warriors. Lower your weapons. We are not fighting him. We are not killing him over this. Then she faced Clara Whitlock, switching to broken English. You want him? You have him. And when winter kills you both, when your baby freezes, when this choice ruins him, remember this. I offered mercy, faster than what's coming. Tiva swung back onto her horse and looked at Ayo one last time. You are exiled. Effective now. You do not return to the tribe while I live. Her voice cracked. If you do, I will kill you myself, not for what you did to me, for what you've become, a traitor. She rode away. The other warriors followed, some casting looks of pity, others of disgust. The clearing fell silent, broken only by Clara's uneven breathing and the thunder of Ayo's heart. He had done it. He had chosen. And the cost was everything, his people, his honor, his future gone in a single act of defiance. Clara reached out and touched his arm. What just happened? She asked softly. What did you lose? For me, Ayo looked at her, the woman who had somehow become his entire world without him realizing it. Everything he said simply. Then he added, and also nothing, because without you, nothing else matters. Despite the devastation of exile, despite the impossible road ahead, Ayo felt something unexpected settle inside him. Peace. He had chosen rightly, whatever came next. Cold hunger danger, he had chosen love over duty, protection over honor. He would not regret it. Winter came early that year, hard and merciless. Ayo moved into Clara's cabin. Decency no longer mattered. Survival did. He hunted every day, storing meat against the coming storms. Clara, heavy with child, did what she could, sewing warm clothes from hides Ayo brought, drying herbs, preparing for the birth. They did not speak much of exile or sacrifice. It was too fresh, too vast. Instead, they focused on the immediate. Do we have enough firewood? Should we smoke more meat? Will the roof hold under snow? At night by the fire, Clara watched Ayo and felt a crushing mix of guilt and gratitude. He had given up everything for her, his tribe, his promised future, his entire life, and she was only a pregnant woman he had barely known. Why, she asked one night, unable to hold it in any longer. Why did you sacrifice everything for me? Ayo stared into the flames for a long time. The night I stayed, he said slowly. When the baby almost came too early. Clara nodded. That night I saw something, he continued. I saw you fight for life when dying would have been easier. I saw you care more for your child than yourself. He searched for the words. I saw someone worth saving, someone who does not quit. He looked at her. That kind of strength is worth everything. But you loved Tiva. Clara whispered. You were going to marry her. I honored, Tiva, Ayo corrected gently. Not the same as love. He gestured between them. Love is this. Choosing a person even when it costs everything. Even when it makes no sense. Clara gasped sharply. Her hand flew to her belly. Her face drained of color. Ayo. I think it's time. The baby came that night in the heart of a raging snowstorm, as if determined to arrive in defiance of the world itself. Clara labored for 14 brutal hours, crying, screaming, clutching Ayo's hand so hard she bruised him. He stayed with her through every moment, murmuring encouragement, bringing water, doing everything he could remember from watching the tribe's midwives. When the baby finally arrived, a small, fierce girl with a strong, defiant cry that filled the cabin, Clara sobbed with relief and joy. Ayo cut the cord, cleaned the child, wrapped her in the softest rabbit fur, and placed her gently in Clara's arms. She's perfect, Clara breathed, tears streaming down her face. She's absolutely perfect. The baby had dark hair, perhaps the coloring of Victor Hale, but Clara saw none of that. She saw only innocence, only hope, only love. This child was not responsible for the violence that created her. She was simply a baby who deserved protection. Grace, Clara whispered. Grace Whitlock. And as the storm howled outside, a new life breathed warmth into the cabin, proof that even in exile, even in winter, something good could still be born. What will you name her? Ayo asked softly. Clara Whitlock thought for a long moment, watching the tiny chest rise and fall. Grace, she said at last. Grace Whitlock. Because you gave me Grace when I had none. Because she is the future I never believed I'd see. In the weeks that followed, as Clara healed and Grace grew stronger, something quietly shifted between them. The danger had passed. The crisis eased, and now they had to face what they had become to one another. Ayo adored Grace from the first breath she took. He carved small wooden toys, sang Apache lullabies when she cried, walked the floor with her for hours when she wouldn't settle. Watching him with her daughter, Clara felt her heart open completely. This man who had lost everything had gained a family he never asked for and loved them without hesitation. One evening, with Grace sleeping peacefully in her basket, Clara finally found the courage to speak. "I love you," she said simply. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe the first night you stayed, maybe when you stood against 7 warriors for me, but I love you. Io, I know it complicates everything." He kissed her gently as if she were something fragile and precious. When he pulled back, his eyes shone. "I love you too," he said quietly. "Since I saw you in the garden fighting to live, since I saw you refuse to break, you are the strongest person I have ever known." They married the following spring. No priest, no tribal blessing, just the two of them and baby Grace speaking vows beneath the open mountain sky, blending what little they remembered of Apache tradition with Clara's Christian faith and meaning every word. Life was hard, but it was good. Clara's garden flourished with the thaw. Io's hunting kept their stores full. Grace grew strong and bright. They lived in a small world of their own apart from both Apache and white settlements, and it was enough. Until the day a child vanished. It happened in late summer. A boy from Io's former tribe, 6 years old, curious and bold, wandered too far from camp and disappeared into the forest. The tribe searched for 2 days without success. His mother was frantic, his father silent and grim. Even Tiva, who led most of the search parties, showed signs of desperation. Clara learned of it from a traveling trader, Cole Barrett, who stopped by their cabin. He was surprised to find a white woman living with an Apache, but trade was trade, and news traveled freely. "They're saying the boy's likely dead," he said. 3 days gone. These mountains don't forgive children." Clara felt a sharp ache in her chest. She looked at Grace sleeping peacefully nearby and imagined that terror her child alone lost crying. She pictured the boy's mother. "I might know where he is," Clara said suddenly. "There's a cave system about 5 miles north of here. It's deep, easy to get lost. If he was frightened, he might have hidden there." Io's eyes narrowed. "That's tribal land. If we go there, they will see us." "A child is missing," Clara said firmly. "Nothing else matters. We have to try." They left Grace in the care of Anna Barrett and headed into the forest. The caves were dangerous, twisting passages that burrowed deep into the mountain. They searched for hours, calling the boy's name, marking their path so they wouldn't be trapped themselves. It was Clara who heard it first, a faint whimper echoing from deep within the stone. They found the boy huddled in a narrow chamber, terrified and thirsty, but alive. His leg was injured, likely from a fall, but he was conscious and responsive. "We've got you," Clara said gently, though he likely didn't understand her words. "You're safe now." As they carried him out of the cave, they emerged straight into a search party from the tribe. Tiva stood at the front. She froze. For a long moment, no one moved. Io, the exile, Clara, the white woman, and the missing child in their arms. Then the boy's mother rushed forward with a cry, taking her son and sobbing into his hair. The boy spoke rapidly in Apache, pointing at Io and Clara, explaining how they had found him and saved him. Nero, the tribe's healer, examined the injury and declared the boy would recover bruised and shaken, but alive. Slowly the mood shifted. Tribe members approached, not with anger, but with something else. Gratitude. The boy's father clasped Io's arm. "You saved my son," he said quietly. "Thank you, brother." An elder woman stepped forward and gently touched Clara's hand. "You knew where to search when we did not," one of the elders said. "The spirits led you to him." Even some who had ridden with Tiva that day, those who had come ready to burn Clara Whitlock's cabin, now looked away in shame, unable to meet her eyes. They had meant to kill this woman. Instead, she had saved one of their children. Tiva stood apart, watching the shift ripple through the gathering. Her expression was unreadable. When her gaze met Clara's, something passed between them, not friendship, but recognition. an understanding forged in pain. At last Tokan, the old chief, stepped forward. His voice carried the weight of the High Stone Council. "You saved one of our own when you had every reason to let him die," he said. "When we exiled Io, when my niece led warriors to burn your home, you showed a mercy we did not deserve." "I couldn't let a child die," Clara answered simply. "No matter whose child he was." Tokan studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Io. "The exile is lifted. You may return to the tribe, both of you. The white woman who saved our child is welcome here." It should have felt like triumph, like vindication. But as Clara watched the mother sob with relief, watched the boy cling to his parents, she felt only a quiet sadness, not for herself, but for how much suffering might have been spared if understanding had come before fear. Tiva approached last. Her face was carefully controlled, pride wrestling with regret. "You saved him," she said flatly. "I'm a mother," Clara replied. "I understand that fear." Tiva's eyes drifted to Grace Whitlock, nestled against Io's chest. Something flickered there, pain perhaps, or grief for the children she would never have with him. "I was wrong about you," Tiva said at last. The words clearly cost her, not about everything, but about some things. "You are not weak. You are not a coward, and you are not a threat." "Thank you," Clara said quietly. Tiva turned to Io. "I wanted to punish you," she said, "for choosing her, for rejecting me, for making me feel—" She stopped, drew a breath. "For making me feel I wasn't enough." Tiva Io began, but she raised a hand. "Let me finish. I asked the council to exile you. Not just you, her as well. I wanted her driven into the wilderness to die." Her voice cracked. "I wanted her to suffer the way I was suffering." The confession hung heavy in the air. Clara felt an unexpected compassion. She understood this pain, the sharp wound of rejection, of being discarded, of watching someone choose another. The council agreed. Tiva continued. They voted. The exile was to be permanent. You were to be driven from these mountains, or killed if you resisted. She swallowed. And I was glad. I wanted revenge more than justice. But Clara said gently, "You saved our child anyway." "Yes," Tiva replied, "knowing what I had done, knowing what I tried to do." Shame shadowed her proud features. That is the mark of a true warrior, not strength with weapons, but choosing mercy when vengeance would be easier. She turned to the gathered tribe and spoke loudly in Apache, then repeated herself in broken English for Clara. "I called for this woman's death. I said she was dangerous, that she would bring soldiers, that she was a sickness. But she brought only kindness. While I sought to burn her home, she sought to save our children." She lifted her chin. "I no longer oppose her presence. I no longer oppose Io's choice." It was the closest thing to an apology Tiva could offer, public, formal binding. Words spoken before the tribe could not be taken back. Tokan nodded solemnly. The council hears Tiva's words. The exile is not only lifted, it is erased. Io is restored with full honor. Clara Whitlock is accepted as a sister of the tribe, and her daughter Grace is one of us. A murmur of approval spread. Then Clara stepped forward. "Chief Tokan," she said softly, "may I speak? Speak, daughter." Tiva acted from pain, not evil, Clara said. She felt betrayed by someone she loved. She made terrible mistakes. Clara met Tiva's eyes. "So have I. I know what it is to act from hurt, from feeling broken. If the council is considering punishment for Tiva, I ask that you show her mercy as she has now shown me." The tribe stirred in surprise, the meaning of her words settling like a held breath in the mountain air. Tokan's eyes widened just slightly. "You would stand for the woman who tried to have you killed. I would stand for the woman who admitted she was wrong." Clara Whitlock answered, her voice steady. "For the woman who chose truth over pride. That kind of courage is rarer than violence." and far stronger. Tiva stared at Clara in stunned silence. No one spoke. The mountain wind whispered through the pines, carrying the sharp scent of approaching autumn. Grace Whitlock stirred softly in Tiva's arms, her small sound breaking the stillness. At last Tiva spoke, her voice thick and unsteady. "Why?" she asked. "Why defend me? I deserve punishment." "Because mercy has to begin somewhere," Clara said simply. "Someone has to choose forgiveness over revenge. Otherwise the cycle never ends. Your people hurt mine. Mine hurt yours. Back and forth forever unless someone says, 'Enough.'" She stepped closer to Tiva. "You tried to burn my cabin because you were wounded. My godfather destroyed me because of his own darkness. His wife cast me out because she was afraid. If I seek revenge and they strike back and it goes on and on," Clara shook her head. "I refuse. I choose forgiveness. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to become what hurt me." Something shattered in Tiva's expression. The woman who had never cried, who wore strength like armor, now had tears streaming down her face. "You shame me," she whispered. "Your mercy exposes my cruelty." "No," Clara said firmly. "Your honesty honors my mercy. You could have stayed silent. You could have let others take the blame, protected your pride. Instead, you spoke the truth when it cost you. That is real strength." Tokan watched them with grave attention. Then he turned to the tribe. "The white woman has taught us what we should have remembered. Mercy creates mercy. Honesty creates honor. Courage wears many faces." He lifted his staff. "There will be no punishment for Tiva. Her confession and her change are enough. And we will remember this day, the day a woman we meant to kill showed us what true strength looks like." The gathering slowly broke apart. Several people came forward to thank Clara, to brush Grace's tiny hand, to offer gifts of welcome. The warmth of it overwhelmed her acceptance after so much cold rejection. As evening fell and Clara and Io prepared to return to the cabin, Tiva stopped them one last time. "I want you to know," she said to Io, "I loved you, truly. Losing you cut deep." "I know," Io replied gently, "and I'm sorry I hurt you. You deserved honesty sooner. You gave it when it mattered," Tiva said. She turned to Clara. "You chose well." She hesitated, then forced the words out. "She is better than I would have been for you. For the man you wanted to become." It was a final gift, a release. Tiva turned away, walking off with her back straight and her head high, wounded, but not broken. Changed but not destroyed. "Will she be all right?" Clara asked quietly. "In time," Io said. "She is strong. She will hurt, then heal. And she will find someone worthy of her, someone who chooses her first, the way I chose you." They walked back to the cabin as twilight deepened, Grace sleeping peacefully between them. For the first time since her nightmare began, Clara felt that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind her. She was wrong. There was one more reckoning to come, one last piece of the past demanding an answer. It would arrive as a letter carried by a traveling priest, tearing open old wounds and forcing her to face the man who had destroyed her innocence. But tonight she did not know that. Tonight she held her daughter close, walked beside the man who had become her angel, and allowed herself to believe in happy endings. The letter arrived in early winter, brought by Father Samuel Crow, a traveling priest who served scattered settlements and, when permitted, Apache camps. He was an elderly man with kind eyes who had heard rumors of a white woman living among the Apache and wanted to be certain she was there by choice. When he found Clara healthy, loved with a baby in her arms and a husband who looked at her as if she were the center of the world, his concern softened into relief. "I'm glad to see you well, my child," Father Samuel Crow said. "The stories I heard did not match this truth." "Stories rarely do," Clara replied, offering him coffee. "What brings you so far into these mountains, Father?" "Several matters," he said, reaching into his satchel. "But one concerns you." He drew out a worn envelope. "This letter is from Victor Hale's parents, your godfather's family. They asked me to find you if you still lived." They said it was urgent. Clara's hand trembled as she took it. She had not heard that name in over a year, had tried to bury everything connected to it. How did they even know to look for you, Father? Samuel Crow asked quietly. Apparently, Eli Salazar. Victor Hale's youngest son ran away from home 6 months ago. He went straight to his grandparents and told them everything. What Victor did to you. How Ruth Hale threw you out. The lies they all upheld. The priest's face was heavy with sorrow. They were horrified, my child. Truly horrified. Clara Whitlock felt her vision blur. Eli, she whispered. Sweet, gentle Eli, the boy who had cried when she left. He had found the courage to speak when no one else would. With trembling fingers, she opened the letter. Io stepped close behind her, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. Silent, solid. She began to read aloud, translating the Spanish so he could understand. Dearest Clara, we write to you with hearts filled with shame and grief. Eli came to us 6 months ago and revealed truths we should have seen for ourselves. Our son Victor is a monster who hid behind righteousness. You were an innocent child placed in our care, and we failed you utterly. When Eli told us what Victor had done, the abuse, the violations, the cruelty, we confronted him. He denied everything at first. But when we threatened to involve the authorities, when we made it clear we believed Eli over him, he confessed without remorse, without shame. He claimed you tempted him, that you wanted it. The words of a coward. We have taken the following actions. Victor has been fully disowned. He will receive nothing from our estate, not a single coin. The cabin and land that belong to your parents legally belong to you. We hold the deed. It is yours free and clear. We have also established a trust for your daughter. 1/3 of our estate will go to her upon reaching adulthood. This is not charity. It is justice. Victor's crime created her, and our wealth will ensure she never suffers for his sins. The remainder of our estate will be divided among our other grandchildren with strict provisions, ensuring Victor can never access any portion of it. We have reported Victor's crimes to the territorial authorities. He now faces charges of assault and abuse of a minor. Ruth Hale faces charges of criminal neglect for casting you out while pregnant. Victor has been formally excommunicated from the church. Father Samuel Crow himself brought the charges before the bishop. Within our Christian community, Victor is now persona non grata, unwelcome in any home, business, or gathering. We know none of this can undo the harm done to you. It cannot restore your innocence or erase your suffering. But we hope it offers some measure of justice. If you are alive and reading this, please know you were never the problem. You were an innocent child betrayed by those sworn to protect you. We are deeply, profoundly sorry, and if you can find it in your heart, we would dearly wish to meet our great-granddaughter. With regret and love, Henry Hale and Margaret Hale. By the time Clara finished reading, she was sobbing. Not the quiet, broken crying of pain, but something freer, raw, released. Ao wrapped his arms around her as she shook, holding her upright, while the tears came. They believed me, she whispered. Someone finally believed me. Father Samuel cleared his throat gently. There is more, my child. Victor Hale's fall has been complete. He has lost everything. His wife divorced him rare, but the church granted it given the circumstances. His children want nothing to do with him. He has been driven from the territory, the priest sighed. Last I heard, he's living in a mining camp, working for pennies, drinking away what little he earns. He's become everything he once claimed to despise. Clara tried to feel satisfaction, tried to feel victory. Mostly she just felt tired. I don't want to see him, she said quietly. I don't need that. And you won't, Father Samuel replied. But his parents, they are different. They truly wish to make amends. They've asked whether you might consider visiting them or allowing them to visit you. They wish to know their great-granddaughter. Clara looked up at Io. What do you think? They tried to set things right, Io said carefully. They gave you justice. They gave Grace a future. That is honorable. But only you can choose whether they belong in your life. Clara considered it. These were not the ones who had hurt her. They were elderly grandparents who had been deceived and who acted decisively once they learned the truth. They had given her land security, justice. But more than that, they had named her innocence out loud. Tell them, Clara said at last to Father Samuel, that they may visit in the spring, when the weather is kinder and the journey safer. She paused, her voice steady but honest. I can't promise forgiveness, but I can promise to listen. I'm still learning how to do that for myself, Clara. Whitlock said quietly. But I can promise I'll listen to what they have to say. Father Samuel Crow smiled gentle and approving. That's more than fair, my child. I'll pass along your words. He gathered his things to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing. Eli Salazar asked me to tell you he's sorry for not speaking sooner, for not being brave enough to defend you when it mattered. He was 12, Clara said firmly. Tell him he has nothing to apologize for. Tell him he's the bravest person in that entire family. Her voice wavered. Tell him I love him. He'll always be my little brother. After Father Samuel left, Clara sat with the letter for a long time, reading it again and again, letting each line settle. Justice, validation, restitution, things she had never believed would be hers. How do you feel? Io asked softly. Strange, Clara admitted. For so long I believed I was worthless, that everything was my fault, that I deserved to be thrown away. She lifted the letter. And now the world is saying I didn't deserve it, that I was innocent, that I was worth defending. You always were, Io said. Long before any letter said so. I know, Clara replied, searching for the words. But believing it in your heart isn't the same as having the world acknowledge it. Having Victor Hale's own parents call him a monster. Having the church cast him out. Having the law finally see him for what he is. She met Io's eyes. It's like the universe is finally agreeing with what you've been telling me all along. She reached for his hand. You were my angel when I needed one most. Before justice, before letters, before anyone believed me, you did. You saw me. You saved me. No, Io said, drawing her close. You saved yourself. You survived. You kept fighting. You built a life from nothing. He hesitated, then smiled faintly. I just made sure you didn't have to fight alone anymore. That night, lying together while Grace slept peacefully in her cradle, something inside Clara finally loosened. The shame that had lived in her chest like a stone began to dissolve. She had been carrying Victor Hale's guilt as if it were her own, believing his lies about her worthlessness. But she wasn't worthless. She never had been. Spring came, and with it, Henry Hale and Margaret Hale. They were old and weary from the journey, yet resolute. When they saw Clara healthy, strong with a beautiful child and a husband who watched her like she was the center of the world, Margaret wept. I'm so sorry, the old woman said, clasping Clara's hands. For what our son did, for what we failed to see, for failing you so completely. Clara had expected to feel distant, guarded. Instead, seeing the grandmother's genuine grief, she found her anger slipping away. You didn't know, she said gently. And when you learned the truth, you acted. That matters. They stayed 3 days. The Hales adored Grace, holding her tenderly, and promising her a future filled with learning and opportunity. They met Io, and after the first awkward moments, their respect for him grew deep and sincere. You gave our granddaughter everything we should have given her, Henry told Io. Protection, love, dignity. We owe you a debt. I gave her what every person deserves, Io replied simply. Nothing more. Before they left, Margaret drew Clara aside and pressed a small wooden box into her hands. I brought you something. Inside lay jewelry, her mother's jewelry, the pieces Clara had believed lost forever. Victor sold most of your parents' belongings after they died, Margaret explained. But I found these hidden away when we removed his things. They were your mother's. They belong to you. Clara lifted the familiar locket, the one her mother had worn every day. Inside were tiny portraits of her parents, young and smiling. She had forgotten her mother's smile. Seeing it again, she felt a connection to the past that wasn't only pain. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me back this piece of them. When the Hales departed, Clara felt a chapter closing. The trauma would never vanish completely, she knew that. The scars would remain. But they were no longer the whole story. Her story also held Ayo's unwavering love, Grace's perfect innocence, the tribe's acceptance, justice finally served, forgiveness freely chosen, and a future they were building together, not despite the past, but shaped by it, strengthened by it. Ready to go home? Ayo asked Grace, resting asleep in his arms. Clara Whitlock looked toward the cabin in the distance, the cabin she had rebuilt with bleeding hands, the place where she had given birth, where she had learned what love truly meant. Home. Yes, it was home not because of the wood and stone, but because of the family living inside its walls. 5 years later, Clara stood in the doorway of that same cabin, now larger, sturdier, and truly settled, watching Grace Whitlock play in the yard with her 2 younger siblings. The garden was lush and thriving. Members of the tribe came by often. Letters and small gifts still arrived from Henry Hale and Margaret Hale, keeping alive a bond built on genuine remorse and hard-earned love. Victor Hale had died 2 years earlier in a mining accident, drunk, alone, and forgotten. When Clara heard the news, she felt only a quiet sadness. Not for the man he was, but for the man he might have become had he chosen differently. She had forgiven him long ago, not because he deserved it, but because she refused to carry his poison any longer. She had been abandoned and pregnant, forced to build her life from nothing, until an Apache warrior became her angel and did what no one else dared. Ayo chose her when the world declared her worthless. Together they proved that real love doesn't erase your past. It helps you rewrite it. Tell me, have you ever been saved by someone who had every reason to walk away, but chose to stay? Have you ever been the angel for someone else? Drop your location in the comments, tap the like button, and share this story with someone who needs to remember this truth. Your worst moment does not define you. Your choice to rise does. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work.